Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more. Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with Future Tech Podcast. Almost here, round the corner technology. And today I have Igor Telyatnikov, COO and President of AlphaPoint Blockchain Solutions. Igor, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks, Richard. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. I was at BTC Miami, but I didn't manage to catch most of you guys' presentation, so I'm glad we're talking, and I'm sure listeners that couldn't make it want to hear more about AlphaPoint. So, yeah, can you give a brief overview of what you guys do in the space?
Yeah, sure. So what we do in the space at AlphaPoint is we help financial institutions, large, small, startups, all the way to the largest of financial institutions, deploy blockchain technology with our distributed ledger platform. So we've been in the space since 2013. Makes us veterans in the blockchain world, and we've been delivering blockchain technology, digital asset exchange technology, helping folks digitize assets, trade assets, and manage digital assets with the new technology.
Yeah, and when you say distributed ledger, whose ledger is it? Is it your guys' own blockchain, or is it Bitcoin? Which one are you using?
Yeah, so what we do is we interoperate with third-party ledgers, and we also have our own ledger technology that we've developed that's proprietary. So, it really depends on the use case, but we interoperate with 20 different ledgers and fabrics that are out there. Initially it was all Bitcoin and derivatives of Bitcoin with cryptocurrencies, but, since then, there are so many initiatives out there to digitize different assets on new types of ledgers, with Ethereum, with Ethereum-based smart contracts, with R3, with Hyperledger, and we're involved, in many of those initiatives and supporting those ledgers and tokens that are digitized on them in our platform. And we also help folks digitize more complex financial instruments on our activity ledger versus just a simple asset ledger. We've actually developed an activity ledger that can digitize more complex financial instruments.
So I guess you'd say you're blockchain agnostic. Is that how you'd say it?
We are. We're opinionated, and we do believe that not all blockchains are created equal. But we also believe that there won't be one blockchain to rule them all. We believe that there will be blockchains and networks that asset networks and ledgers that will become prominent for particular use cases, and we're looking ahead to the future where interoperability between these ledgers will be important.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's probably what is going to happen. Each one will evolve, and its specialty will make it the front runner in that area.
Yeah, I mean, it's the characteristics are different, right? So it does make sense that you would have unique ledgers for different asset classes.
Yeah, if you don't mind, let's go a little deeper into digitization of assets. What kind of assets? How does it work? What are the benefits? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, as a whole, I think this was initially called Bitcoin 2.0, back in the day in 2013, 2014, when honestly, myself and the folks on our team were excited. Why we started AlphaPoint was we saw how this breakthrough technology could be applied in the long run to other assets and really remove friction from financial infrastructure. And, what it was called Bitcoin 2.0 was taking the underlying technology and applying it to other assets. Now we've transitioned, and we now call that blockchain. We call that distributed ledger technology. But the concept is pretty simple. You take an asset, that's in the real world, be it, a physical asset, like gold or a precious metal, or an asset like a building or potentially a life, or these different asset classes that are out there, commodities, and you make a representation of that, on a distributed ledger that can be shared between parties.
Okay, so let's say gold, 1 ounce gold, gold pieces. How would this application look? Like, what would happen? How would the blockchain be interacted with? What would it look like for someone wanting to, put their asset on there and then buy it or sell it or claim right to it?
Yeah, so there aren't, all of the details out of what's going to be done, but there was, a pretty big announcement not too long ago, I believe in November or December of last year, where the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, CME, in partnership with the Royal Mint, announced that they're digitizing up to or possibly over $1 billion worth of gold, where the Royal Mint will actually secure the gold in their vault and then issue a token, an RMG, a Royal Mint Gold token, to represent that. So that's, an example of that actually happening, right? And there are lots of initiatives across the world to digitize cotton. A big investment bank recently announced that they have an initiative to digitize other types of commodities, and I think we're going to see a lot more of this in 2017. Right, 2016 was really the year where financial institutions were just dipping their toe in the water. Starting to invest in the ecosystem, starting to, there are teams of anywhere from 5 to close to 100. Staff at large financial institutions now looking at the technology and working rapidly to put it into production. So, it's really just the beginning, and I think, we'll see lots of different assets become digitized.
And what about the token itself? I guess in some situations, the token would have a value, 1 token equals 1 ounce or 1 unit or one, it would be like a 1-to-1 ratio. In other applications, would the token value, would it have no value except as a placeholder? I mean, how does the token specifically interact with the asset that's been digitized?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on how these networks are deployed. But you could have a situation. There are federated ledgers that can be deployed, or they can be private or fully public, and it really depends on how many issuers will there be. So if we take a commodity like oil, and you have suppliers that want to offer it onto the market, you might have multiple issuers, and you're to some extent going to be trusting those issuers when they issue the token that they are good for that representation of the asset that they've digitized. So it's different than the public blockchain space where you have Bitcoin and there's intrinsically value in Bitcoin because of scarcity and other it's really just price discovery on the exchanges of what people are willing to pay for it, for the utility it provides. With these other assets, we're really talking about just creating a more digital form, a digitized form of that asset, and instead of storing that in a central database like we do today, and doing debits and credits and then having reconciliation issues between counterparties, we have a scenario where we can have one shared trusted ledger for an asset class that when a trade occurs and the transaction is posted to the ledger and signed cryptographically, you have a much higher level of assurance that you're not going to have. It effectively eliminates reconciliation. That's why so many studies that have been out there by Santander, by Goldman Sachs, most recently by Accenture, that in the over $10 to $20 billion will be saved by the sell side, the banking industry, by eliminating some of these infrastructure costs.
That's great. It's going to be a lot smoother and faster. Yeah, I was going to ask you, are there any use cases you can talk about where you guys are intimately involved? If you can, I understand, but a few examples of how this is playing out or how it's going to play out this year.
Yeah, so I'm happy to disclose some initiatives that are public. One that actually was announced some time ago, and was one of our earliest customers. So Bit recently raised $16 million to become the PayPal of the Caribbean. The problem that they were looking to solve is, first, the Caribbean doesn't support PayPal. Their financial infrastructure, is fraught with friction because each island in the Caribbean and CARICOM, the Caribbean nations, has their own national currency. So Barbados has the Barbados dollar, Trinidad has the Trinidad dollar, and so on. And they each have their own Federal Reserve, and commerce between the islands is very difficult. So what BIT has done is they've gotten buy-in from more and more of the Federal Reserves of these islands, and to digitize the national currency of those islands. And what they're doing is they're digitizing it onto a blockchain. They've created and launched a digital asset exchange that will facilitate FX transactions between those. And so what they offer to the citizens of the different nations that they support is a free mobile app to do peer-to-peer transfers similar to PayPal, and they make revenue on FX transactions and on payment processing, very much like PayPal's business model. So this is a live example. This is happening now. They've been deployed, and as it's a very similar use case to what the Bank of England recently released a report stating that if countries are to digitize their national currencies to 30% of GDP, or 30% of their national currencies, it will permanently have the potential to increase GDP by 3%, which is an $80 billion increase to the UK's GDP. So, and that's all from just reducing fees for end users and removing friction from financial systems. So it's a pretty eye-opening opportunity for folks to get engaged.
Huh, okay. Any other use cases you can talk about?
So we've been involved in some other use cases. In our distributed ledger platform, we have three primary pillars, or modules. We have our asset issuance and custody module. We have an asset exchange and settlement module, and we have an asset reconciliation and reporting module. And we help those all interoperate, or they can be used standalone. So digitizing assets and the exchange, creating a marketplace for those new assets is definitely our bread and butter. And we've also done work with some financial institutions on, digitizing assets that are within a single institution to help reduce reconciliation costs. We're going to have an announcement about that coming up here shortly. And we've done some other interesting work around some other alternative asset classes that the news is forthcoming, so I'm afraid I can't share too much more at this point.
No problem. And the actual end users themselves, the customers of the financial institution, the owners of gold or property, they won't see any of this underlying blockchain technology, but they'll just experience shorter times to verify or transfer assets, lower fees. What will they experience?
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at an example like digitizing gold, right? So if you're an owner of I meant to say digitizing art, or like another illiquid asset, digitizing a yacht, right? So you may have an asset that's sitting there. You might be high net worth, or you just may have an asset that that's currently just sitting there. You use it yourself, but using it for collateral in the repo markets or otherwise, right now the cost to securitize and to use it as collateral for debt is is difficult and is expensive and is only available to kind of the high net worth individuals, right? So the ability for this technology to more cost effectively digitize assets to be used as collateral, I think is an area where, it's pretty exciting. It's something that, more people will potentially have access to, similar to what peer-to-peer lending did, in exposing, regular kind of retail investors to lending markets, which were previously really reserved as the core business of banks and financial institutions. So I think that's one area where, it's going to offer up some new products and services to people that maybe have not experienced those in the past. But on the, on the most broadest use case for end users in our daily lives, I think ultimately, it's going to speed up the transfer of funds, ACH and, wire transfers, some of those things, that take more time, 2 to 3 days, over time, as this technology is implemented more, it's going to be closer and closer to instantaneous, right? So, there are other regulatory factors. It's not even that the blockchain can facilitate these faster transactions than existing technology, because ultimately blockchain is a little slower than existing point-to-point transaction software. But what it does is it provides a greater level of security and trust for transactions that do occur, so that the risk kind of associated with them can be reduced, and then we'll see kind of the easing of some regulatory burdens on some of those transactions, which will result in faster clearing times for end users.
Gotcha. I just have a couple more questions about digitization of assets. You said it's expensive, it's hard, it takes time. Why? Why is it? What's the difficulty in doing it now? Why is it slow? Why is it expensive? Maybe just a couple details on what's involved.
Yeah, I mean, currently you have to. It depends what type of asset, but if you're securitizing a company, right? You have to go through, and this won't change actually, with blockchain, but you have to go through certain, the SEC, and you have to go through certain, going public, right? There are a lot of underlying costs to securitizing a business and putting shares out onto a public market. With other asset classes, say real estate or yachts, a lot of these transactions happen in over-the-counter marketplaces where there's just, it's really difficult to have buyers and sellers. So, it's as much a problem of securitizing and kind of the issuance of the asset as it is to create a marketplace where market participants and there's actual activity. Okay. It's a two-sided market. So one of the things that we do very well is we can help spin up a marketplace for these new assets, whether we're involved in the creation of the asset or not. We're completely product and token agnostic. We can do that for a fraction of the cost of what it would take in the past. Rather than tens of millions of dollars in implementation fees to launch a new marketplace, as existed in the past, that cost is being pushed down by technology providers like us and others.
Okay, I see what you mean. So let's say impressionist painters like Monet and others. Normally you're saying those would be over-the-counter transactions, individuals. If someone has one and they want to sell it or want to buy one, the market's not really centralized, and so your technology can help create a faster, more liquid market for things like that are typically unseen by most and illiquid.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you have a piece of art that's worth $1 million, $10 million, you may want to securitize it. You may want to sell off pieces of that because you want liquidity. For you need the capital for something else, right? So you could share the ownership on a piece, of art, you could tokenize that, put it on a blockchain, and create a market that then people can buy pieces of it, and sell pieces of it, and you have an actual digital representation of it. You have it secured, in a private wallet and with private keys and kind of the other aspects of the technology that we're all pretty familiar with.
That's very interesting. Okay, it's like NetJets, but for other assets. Huh. Okay. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other applications of what you guys do that I haven't covered? I mean, I guess we just got fascinated. I did on the digitization of assets, but anything else AlphaPoint's really strong on that we haven't covered much?
Yeah, I mean, look, the company, the technical founders of the company come from a background in building, the highest performance financial applications, and there's a lot of opportunities in applying this technology across capital markets, across financial services more broadly. I think there's certainly opportunities in the back office as well, and just transaction processing, but also storage of data. Where we've seen some things come out, with NASDAQ and others that have done some work around proxy voting. Broadridge recently acquired a company for $135 million. I believe it was called InvestiShare. That they were developing, some proxy voting technology around that. So there's master data management use cases. There are lots of use cases because, blockchain technology or distributed ledger technology is a very unique combination of, technologies that we've already seen before. But it's a data store. It's at the simplest, conceptual level. It's just a database, right? It's not very exciting, but it's a unique type of database that can be shared between parties and have, cryptography, public-private keys, encryption, and networking all built in. And it replaces different parts of the stack. Typically you have data silos at these different institutions, and then you have message buses between those data silos, and you have security, kind of layered in. And this technology really combines all those components. So, it's an infrastructure level component, and we at AlphaPoint are providing the infrastructure technology, but we're also focused on providing real value from the technology. I think we've been focused on how do we add value with the technology in the next 1 to 3 years versus some of the initiatives that are trying to boil the ocean that, it's going to take 5 to 10 years to see real, live applications with value moved on them. So, yeah, I mean, specifically other use cases, there are more broad use cases in master data management and some other uses of the technology that just uses the data structure, the concepts of data immutability, provenance, the auditability, and some of those components that particularly technology departments, CIOs, CTOs find very compelling for, a wide variety of use cases. And, we get involved in a lot of different ones. We try to provide the technology infrastructure and let others build on top of it.
Makes sense. Okay. Yeah, last question. This may be outside your purview, I don't know, but do you think that this is going to make insurance, because of the immutability of the ledgers, do you think that this will make the insurance portion of the digitization of these assets cheaper, more available, because there's this immutability?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in, I don't know if it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, but I think insurance, like title insurance for a home, right? If you own a home, when you purchase a home, you have to typically pay for title insurance, and title insurance, is just insurance that somebody's not going to come back and say, oh, I actually own your home, right? And all that is doing is ensuring that there's not a an error in the registry, in the central registry system that's being maintained typically by a government entity, right? So, as, assets like mortgages, homes, and others become placed onto these ledgers and are kind of broadly accepted for, this is the ledger we're going to use for all home registrations in the country, right? At that point, and there are countries like Estonia has practically gone to this model, right? There are countries that are actually using this technology effectively to already do this, and you really do eliminate the need for some of these just taxes or costs that are trying to protect from an issue in the ledger. So once you have the trust in the ledger, you eliminate some of those costs, and yes, you reduce that cost for all end users.
Yeah, just a quick anecdote. In the world of title insurance, it's expensive, and you actually need it, because I've had cases with houses where there was a mortgage that wasn't disclosed or wasn't found, and it's amazing. You would think that, yeah, supposedly it all goes to a central database and they won't miss anything, but they do. So hopefully with distributed ledgers, this won't happen, and it'll be cheaper and faster.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, just and if it's public and it's easy to tell, I mean, it's just a quick search, right? We sometimes, we're so far into kind of the internet age that we sometimes take for granted, how many things are still, on paper, there's still a lot of opportunity there, and I truly believe that blockchain technology will have as much of an impact to the transfer of value and assets and asset movement as the internet had for the transfer of information and communication. So, I think we're very much on the beginning of the wave of the impact that this really will have globally.
Okay. Well, very good. Yeah, that's all the questions I have for right now. For companies that want to find out more about AlphaPoint and start a dialogue with you and learn about how you can help them, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. They can certainly learn about us on www.alphapoint.com or send us an email at info@alphapoint.com.
Well, very good. Igor Telyatnikov, COO and President of AlphaPoint Blockchain Solutions. Thanks for doing the interview. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more. The digitization of these assets cheaper, more available, because there's this immutability.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in I don't know if it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, but I think insurance, like title insurance for a home, right? If you own a home, when you purchase a home, you have to typically pay for title insurance, and title insurance, is just insurance that somebody's not going to come back and say, oh, I actually own your home, right? And all that is doing is ensuring that there's not an error in the registry, in the central registry system that's being maintained typically by a government entity, right? So, as, assets like mortgages, homes, and others become placed onto these ledgers and are kind of broadly accepted for, this is the ledger we're going to use for all home registrations in the country, right? At that point, and there are countries like Estonia has practically gone to this model, right? There are countries that are actually using this technology effectively to already do this, and you really do eliminate the need for some of these just taxes or costs that are trying to protect from an issue in the ledger. So once you have the trust in the ledger, you eliminate some of those costs, and yes, you reduce that cost for all end users.
Yeah, just a quick anecdote. In the world of title insurance, it's expensive, and you actually need it, because I've had cases with houses where there was a mortgage that wasn't disclosed or wasn't found, and it's amazing. You would think that, yeah, supposedly it all goes to a central database and they won't miss anything, but they do. So hopefully with distributed ledgers, this won't happen, and it'll be cheaper and faster.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, just and if it's public and it's easy to tell, I mean, it's just a quick search, right? Yep. We sometimes, we're so far into kind of the internet age that we sometimes take for granted, how many things are still, on paper, there's still a lot of opportunity there, and I truly believe that blockchain technology will have as much of an impact to the transfer of value and assets and asset movement as the internet had for the transfer of information and communication. So, I think we're very much on the beginning of the wave of the impact that this really will have globally.
Okay. Well, very good. Yeah, that's all the questions I have for right now. For companies that want to find out more about AlphaPoint and start a dialogue with you and learn about how you can help them, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. They can certainly learn about us on www.alphapoint.com or send us an email at info@alphapoint.com.
Well, very good. Igor Telyatnikov, COO and President of AlphaPoint Blockchain Solutions. Thanks for doing the interview. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more. COO and President of AlphaPoint Blockchain Solutions. Thanks for doing the interview. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more. Virtual reality, and more.